For 12 years, the German people steeped themselves in the poisonous lies of National Socialism. Eager for power, glory, and the spoils of conquest, they joyously accepted the propaganda of their leaders.
Propaganda, a word commonly portrayed in world media to slander an opposing party's views. In the 1940s and 50s, Germany used propaganda to slander the Allied parties of America, UK, and Russia, and vice versa.
Half a dozen countries for them, a game called divide and conquer. Men like these tell the British we aren't taking the war seriously. They tell the Russians we are letting them down. They tell the British the Russians will sell them out.
But how can we relate this to our time in the more advanced 21st century where public image is everything?
And I'm sorry about that, and I wish that we did not have to take this step. But as your Prime Minister, I must do what is necessary to stop the spread of the virus and to save lives.
We live in a day and age where government are seen as villains, taking from the poor and preserving the rich, with their own image being tarnished more and more with each passing day. The lies, fear tactics and manipulation used by the government are prevalent today. I spoke to social science students at the North East of Scotland College and asked them individually if they trusted the government. Here's what they had to say.
I don't trust the government whatsoever. I think they're all a bunch of joke men and they're a waste of time, simple as that. And if anyone trusts them, I think you're bonkers, just like Dizzy Rascal.
Well, you know, the news has come out recently about those secret parties held at Downing Street over the COVID lockdown period at Christmas. You know, they lied about it, which isn't really a surprise in hindsight, given the. Well, I'm quite biased against the Tories. I suppose it should be said, but yeah, to say do I trust the government is a broad question. I do. I trust them to behave in ways that, you know, serve their interests, which often does overlap with the interests of the public, but not all the time. So, yeah, there's a reason to be skeptical.
To an extent, not to a large extent. I trust that, as previously mentioned by someone else, that they do things to benefit themselves. I trust that you can't trust everything that they say when they talk. I trust that some Parliament officials have our best interests in heart, but they're not the ones that are in power. So, no and yes. It depends on who.
Resounding no, which can be in part to the propaganda and clear manipulation the government relies on to speak to the public. I went on to ask the students specifically in the Brexit campaign how they think propaganda was used.
Propaganda was used quite heavily because with Brexit, it was about take back Britain, we are the best and all that. So like we all know about America being quite arrogant as a country, but I don't think England are much better. When you look at situations like immigration, with big figures like Nigel Farage and Tommy Robinson, they're always going on how they're ruining our country by taking our jobs, our economy and all. But the reality is, the immigrants, they contribute quite heavily. They were great people, hard-working people, and more people are now leaving because of Brexit. And the thing is, Brexit was promised quite a lot, but the reality is it's done absolutely nothing, and Britain thought it was too big for its boots, just like Stormzy.
It was quite a campaign of disinformation, specifically in terms of take back control was one of their campaign slogans, and part of that was in reference to take back control of our immigration, you know, control our borders, whatnot. But the thing about that is that, if I remember rightly, it was the Syrian immigration crisis at the time? There was some immigration crisis where that was fueling that conversation.
I can understand why it's used because it's a tactic that's worked for centuries. We look at people like Hitler. We look at people like Putin currently. People who don't understand a topic, when they're told something, it's a lot easier for them to be like, yes, that's the reasons for that. There's a lot of disillusionment with government, whether that's the EU or that's the national state governments. A lot of people don't feel like there's any point in them voting in things. A lot of people don't understand why they're voting in things. So if we're told a certain thing, it's a lot easier to just go along with that than try to find out our own information. So I don't think it's a great thing, but I can understand why it's used as a tactic.
like mentioned before, I don't think it's personally a good thing, but it is a good tactic to use for people that don't really know what's going on, and to start showing them things, like especially if you use it on social media. Even if it's like subtly as possible, you're still going to get so many people that will see one thing, they'll share it amongst their friends, and they're going to be like, oh, that's really great, I'm just going to go with it.
Again, with the general consensus being quite negative, it shows that the government uses propaganda, but the people see right through it. For example, the bus with £350 million promised to the NHS. We are still yet to see that amount of money funded into it. I asked the students, if done correctly, how powerful is propaganda?
Oh, very powerful, very powerful. Especially, you know, it's proportionate to the level of political literacy that the population has, I reckon. I don't. You'll fact check me on this if I'm wrong, but at the time I remember hearing, the day after the vote came in, the results, the most Googled thing, or question on Google rather, whatever the phrase is, was what is the European Union? Which I just find really, it's funny, but in a sad way, you know?
It can be powerful for people that don't think of the bigger picture. So if you're someone that, you hear one opinion, whether it be social media or just one person, rather than taking to other people's perspectives, and it's very easy because we live in a world where a lot of people will follow other people, and without thinking to themselves properly, is this worth it? Is this the correct decision? They'll just go with the flow. And that's not how politics should be. You should always think properly and think before what you decide. Extremely.
I mean, we just mentioned Hitler, like his propaganda during World War II completely worked for him. It caused an entire war. Looking at Putin just now, we don't know everything that he's saying in Russia. We don't know everything that they're being fed. Very, very powerful tool for those people that don't understand politics, because it's a difficult thing to comprehend if you don't sit and study it, and it's also not something everyone's interested in. It can be quite boring for a lot of people. So if they're just being fed information, you know, the media is a massive outlet.
I mean, it's very, very powerful because you can manipulate it to how you want it to be, and then it might not even be your views, or it might be, but you're going to get everyone to start following you because if you put it out a certain way.
So in conclusion, propaganda is a massively powerful tool for any leader to use. If done correctly, it can sever any trust a population can have with its government and leaders. If done correctly though, you can make a population view you in such a positive light, they will follow your every word.